Okay. So again, really quick, no questions? Nobody? Okay. So, there will be a quiz that will be up tomorrow. It'll be open from Friday to Saturday. I went ahead and I got some feedback about the fact that it's on Blackboard and it is harder than doing it on paper because you can't just take notes right on and I completely agree with that. Didn't even think of it. Um, so went ahead and gave you extra time. Um, I did that for the last one as well, but that one was on accident. This one's on purpose. That's the big difference here. Okay. Um, so if anything like that is helpful for you guys, just mention something. If it's something that I can bend on, I definitely will, because, I'm not here to try to make you guys do worse or anything like that. So, okay, quiz opening up tomorrow, first thing in the morning, 1 a.m. Closes Saturday night, the same as the last one. So, if those dates and times works for everybody here, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Uh, I think it's 4 questions. Only one of them is kind of bigger, so it should probably take 10 minutes. It won't be that bad. Um, there's also a surprise, a little bit of homework. One sheet that was placed in Blackboard. I hope everybody got that announcement yesterday about it. Not that you have to hop on it right away, but I would do it sooner rather than later because it is a code trace similar to like what I have on the screen right here. So you're just going to go through and you're going to say what gets actually printed to the screen. There's going to be a mixture of passing by reference and passing by value, and you just need to figure out what the values end up being in the end. Uh, just wanted to get that in there because the following week the plan is another quiz on more function related, so passing by reference, passing by copy. So you might have one or two of these problems. So I just wanted to do a homework so that it doesn't count against your test grade, um, so that we can get that feedback back to you before you take that quiz. Okay. So if you get that in soon, you can get that feedback before the quiz. All right.
All
Now
right.
the project is out there. Everybody's had a good chance to digest it now. Did we have any questions on the project? Anything that we want to talk about? Okay. So everybody is doing pretty well with it.
Yeah.
Going to see tutors. Plenty of people, hopefully. Okay. So one thing that was brought to my attention that I should have absolutely mentioned, but I don't know how to exactly say it, um, to explain it very well. So now that we've had some experience with passing by reference versus pass by value, I think that we can approach it, and it's something that you will need for the project. It's nothing really to show. It's just that there are some data types uh, that you cannot pass by value. Okay, you cannot pass them by value. You don't have to worry about it too terribly much. I just wanted to say it because your IF stream and your OF stream, these are actually um, full objects. You remember how we talked about object-oriented programming is a thing? We're not doing that, but it is a thing. Well, these are full objects, and anything an object has to be passed by reference. So your C++ compiler should give you an error if you try to pass it by value. Because what it's telling you is like, and in a lot of other languages, this is what'll happen is you'll just pass it and it'll actually just pass it by reference and you won't know. So if you go to modify it, it'll modify back in main. And so some languages take the approach of you have to be explicit with something that passes by reference as the default, and so you will need the ampersand in order to pass it by reference. Does that make sense? Has anybody ran into that yet? Okay. Well, takeaway is pass it by reference. You'll get a very noticeable error message for it. It'll say like, oh, you know, you have to pass this by reference or something like that. It'll say basically you need to put the ampersand in there is what the error will say. So you do it and it works. Okay. So the first thing that I have on the screen here is the passing parameters ref group work document. And so if everybody can download that document, go ahead, get started on it, and hopefully everybody will have the correct answer, and then we'll go through it. Okay. So in main, we have two variables, right? Value 1 and value 2. So I'm going to go ahead and write those up top again. Uh, value 1, get myself a nice little bucket for it, because I'm all about the visual representation of this. So value 1 gets 0, and value 2 gets 1. Okay, so our first cout statement here just couts value 1 space value 2 and then end line. So I'll mark this in red over here to the right that we output 0 space 1, and then we're on to a new line. Okay, so we've done this line. Now we're here. We're going to call function 1. Now with function 1, value 1 is 0 and value 2 is 1. Let's see if either one of those are passed by reference or if they're passed by value. And when I look at function 1, I see they are both passed by value. So over here, I'll just write value 1, which is a copy of 0, and value 2, which is also a copy and is the number 1. Now, inside of the function here, we set value 1 equal to 2. So, cross that out, replace it with a 2. Value 2 gets 4. So, value 2 gets 4. And then we cout value 1 space value 2. Now, since we are in the function here, we're using this value 1 and this value 2. Okay, so don't let that trick you and use those over there. So in red, I will write 2 space 4. And then we have an end line. And now we are done with the function. We're at the end of it. So all of our variables get destroyed. Let's go ahead and erase it. And now we've done this function. Now we are here doing this cout statement. Anybody disagree with me so far? Anybody comments, questions? All right. So we're going to cout value 1 space value 2, and these haven't changed, so it's still just 0, 1, and an end line. So now we are going to execute function 2. And function 2, we're going to pass this 0 and the 1. Now if I look at function 2 though, function 2, our first argument that we pass in is actually passed by reference. So when I do this, value 1, make a little box, I'm actually going to make it into a pointer, and this will point to value 1 over here. So if I just come over here, I'm just going to write it like this. Yeah. And then we'll make value 2 over here. And value 2 is passed by copy, so that becomes a 1 right inside the function. And so we set value 1 equal to 7. Well, value 1, this is a pointer, so we go, oh, okay, follow that all the way over here. And then we replace it with the 7. Now we set value 2 equal to 10. So value 2 goes from 1 to 10. And we're at the end of the function. We are done. So let's go ahead and destroy all of our variables here. And I'll get rid of this. So now we finished executing function 2. Now we do our next cout statement here. And we cout value 1 space value 2. So this time we write a 7 space and a 1. And now we are on function 3. So function 3, don't let this confuse you. Now, always look very carefully. We're passing value 2 and then value 1. So value 2 is the number 1, and value 1 is the number 7. Now let's take a look at that function though. So our value 1 inside of the function is passed by copy, and we're passing value 2, but it's just going to make a copy of the integer 1. And now value 2 is passed by reference. So we'll go ahead and point at whatever we pass in, and we passed in value 1. So if I take this over here and say, okay, I'm pointing at this value back in main. Okay, so value 1 gets 2. So our 1 turns into a 2. And value 2, which is this in main, gets value 1 plus 3. So it gets 5. And now we are at the end of the function. So we go ahead and do our cleanup. And now, so we finished with that function. We're about ready to execute our cout statement here. So our cout is value 1 space value 2 and an end line. So we are right here. So we're going to cout 5 space 1. And then we go to the next line. Now we are here. We finished our cout here. So our function 4, we're going to pass value 1, which is 5. So I'm going to write a 5 there. And value 2, which is a 1. And now if we look at the function, we see they're both passed by reference. Okay. So value 1 and value 2. So we passed in value 1 and value 2 in that order. So they point to the exact same named variables back in main. So value 1 points up here to value 1. And value 2 points over here to value 2. So when we get in here, we're going to immediately declare another variable, temp. And temp gets value 1. So if we follow value 1, it is 5. So let's put a 5 in there. Now we do value 1 gets value 2. So 5 gets overridden with a 1. And then we set value 2 equal to temp. So if we follow value 2, we set it equal to temp, which is down here, which is a 5. And then, last step here, don't forget this, we do a cout statement of value 1 space value 2. So value 1 is 1, value 2 is 5. So we cout a 1 space 5. And then we have an end line there, so let's remember to mark that. And we are done with this function. So do cleanup. function is done. Now we are at our last cout statement. All right. So it's value 1 space value 2. Oh, wait. Value 2 space value 1. Don't fall for that. So value 2 is 5. Space value 1 is 1. End line. System pause. Okay, we are done. Did anybody get it, the whole thing done? Correct? Mostly correct?
I don't know if it's mostly correct. Like the last three I got wrong.
Is it when we got to like function 4, or was it the function 3 that threw you off?
Might have been function 3.
It's because of the value 2 being passed and it going in as value 1 into the argument.
Oh, okay. Did not see it that way.
Yes. So you could,
Okay.
because it's the order that you pass them that matters, right? The name doesn't matter. So always be on the lookout for those, because I am trying to trick you here. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments about this little group work here? Now, can I get a quick poll? Just tell me yay or nay. Because I want to do a group works video this weekend. And do we want it? Do we want a lot more of these? Are these helpful? Um, are you guys still not getting it quite right? So more practice would be helpful. This will be on the quiz. This will be on the final exam. A problem
I
just like
would.
this.
Yeah, I'd be all right with this.
Okay.
Yeah, more practice is good.
Okay. And this is the topic that we should focus on. That's what I'm hearing.
I think so. Yes.
Okay, good, because I got us ready. One more. I was hoping, because if everybody was like, "Oh no, we hate those and we get them," please stop. I would have felt really bad. I was still gonna do it, but um. So okay, this is another one that I just randomly threw together, but you know, let's step through it together rather than calling this a group works, because I went ahead and added a third one in here, but I did name them a little differently, just so that when I'm saying this out loud, I don't confuse myself. Um, so in main we have an int. Why isn't this working? We have an int 1. We have an int 2. And an int 3. So int 1 is declared as 7. Int 2 is declared as a 3. And int 3 is declared as a 0. Okay? So first step, hopefully everybody can get this one. When we see out int 1 space int 2 space int 3. So we would output 7, 3, 0. And then end line, so we're on the next line, right? Okay. So now we are here, and I'm just throwing a whole bunch of stuff in here at this point, if you can't tell. So we call function 1, and we are passing in a 7 here and a 3 here. And if we look at function 1, they're both passed by copy. So if I make my variables down here, we have the 7 is the first argument, so that goes into val1. And the 3 is the second one. So just like that, right? Now, this is an integer returning function, so we return val1 plus val2. So this whole function evaluates to 10. So 10 gets stored into int1. Now, when we do our cout here, we have a 10 space 3 space 0. And next line. Now on to function 2. Function 2 is a void function, so we're not going to return anything. First parameter is passed by value. Second parameter is passed by reference. And we are passing in int2 first, and then int1 second. So, oh, sorry, I forgot to do my cleanup from the last one. There we go. Now we're all clean. Val1, val2. So first of all, val1 gets passed by copy, so that's a 3, comes in. Val2, however, points to int1 that was passed in. So the first thing that we do is val1 plus plus. So remember that just adds 1 to it and stores it. So the 3 turns to a 4. And then val2 gets val1. Well, val2 points up here to the 10. So we replace the 10 with the 4. And then we are done with this function. So we are going to execute this next, but let me do my cleanup first. Okay, so we cout int1 space int2, so 4, 3, 0. And then our next one that we do is function 3. So we have int2 gets function 3 passing in int1 and int3. So int1 is a 4, int3 is a 0. If I come down here, up, both of these are passed by reference. So we have val1, val2, and now val1 points to int1, since that was our first argument. And int3 was our second argument, so val2 points to int3. Okay, now we handled all that. So val1 gets val2 plus 2. So this value gets replaced with val2 plus 2, so 0 plus 2, so 2. Now we return val1 plus val2, so 2 plus 0 equals 2. So int2 gets 2. And then we cout our 1, 2, 3. So that is a 2, and a 0. And we are done. How about that one? Was that one? I know I didn't give you guys any time to do it ahead of time, but following along with that, did that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, awesome. So we'll do a few more like that this weekend. I'll post an announcement about it so that we can be all ready for that the quiz on this topic. Oh yeah, and I completely forgot to mention quiz on looping tomorrow. Looping is the topic still. All right. So, last thing that I have here is for us to do a little code along together. So, everybody feel free to open up Visual Studio. And I started just a little bare bones application here. And while everybody is booting this up and starting to copy this down, I'll explain a little bit about what we're going to do. It's not much different than some stuff we've done in the past and some stuff that you're being asked to do in labs now. But I'm going to take a different approach to it, so there's a little bit different. It's hard to come up with some good examples for using like a multi-value returning function, but I figured, let's do a callback here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to calculate pay as hours worked times pay rate. And inside of this source code here, you see we have our DN declared that we're going to read the data file. Um, and I dropped billable.dat in Discord. I'll go back to the source code here in a second, but you can see we have a person's name, the amount of hours that they've worked, and their base rate of pay. So that is one line from the file, gives you all three of these things that we will then output something like James made this amount of money this week. Something like that, right? We're just going to write it all to the screen. We're going to read it from a file, and we're going to go through all of these, and we'll write them all to the screen. And we'll do it first by doing a normal end of file loop, and then I'll show you how we can actually use a multi-value returning function in a way that uh, makes it a little bit more bearable to do. Okay? So I went ahead and opened the data file here. And I used a constant because we're going to pretend like our billable data file is always there. It's always named the same thing. And right here, I'm just going to close it really quick because I completely will forget to do that. So I'll say if not dn, and we'll just say that that means that our file wasn't found. So somebody didn't load the file properly. So we'll say billable file not found. Please try again. I know we're kind of going back to the thing that you hate, Jacob, and I apologize. So I kind of explained generally what we're going to be doing with this, right? We're going to be taking this billable data file and we're going to read this and we're going to read it straight across. Like, this is one person. We need all three of these data points in order to process it, right? We can't just read one. We're not just going to read a string. That would be the person's name and then go to the next iteration of this loop. No, we're going to have to read all three of these all at once, right? Well, maybe not all at once, but you'll see what I mean. So if we take our DN and we do our extraction operator name, so we're saying give me a string, so that will read James, and then our cursor, our quote unquote cursor, will be right here. And then if we did a float next, it would skip the leading white space and then read the float here, right? So we can just do uh, hours worked and pay rate. So that'll read a string, a float, and a float. And then we'll be right here. And then the next time that we go to read, we'll read a string, a float, and a float. And we'll be right there, right? So really, this is our priming read. And then we have our while dn statement. It says, so while we still have data, we have our loop body right here. Let me this is the loop test. So our loop body, what are we going to do? Well, let's hold off on that really quick. And let's just do our modify LCV. So our modify LCV is just this, just the exact same thing. We're just going to read the next line of data from our file. So in this case, rather than dealing with like a one integer at a time, we're reading an entire line from a file. Now, in my loop body, what I really want to do is I want to see out the person's name. So I'm going to say name, and then I'll do a colon space and dollar sign, and then do uh, calc pay. We'll call calc pay, and we will pass in our hours worked and our pay rate. And then that'll handle all of the calculations for us that we need to do, right? So now, well, this should be it actually, right? This will get us, I think, everything that we needed. So it'll output the name, yeah, and how much money they made. Perfect. Now, what I want to change is I don't really love this just having the D in here. So instead, what I want to do is because I have this in two different places. What if I put these out of order? If I put these out of order, it messes up the entire thing. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a multi-returning function that will grab all of those pieces of data from the file and will return them all set up for me, so I don't have to worry about the order that they're passed in at, or the order that they're in the file as. So I'll just say get line, no. Get line of data. Let's just say that. And so the first thing that we need to pass in is actually an IF stream because we want to pass in our DN, and I'll just call it DN. And we need to pass in our string name and our float hours worked and our float pay rate. Now, looking at this, let's see here. I know that I need this to be passed by reference. That has to be passed by reference. That has to be passed by reference. And if I look at it, I think the reason why is that this is an out variable. Whatever whatever the whatever the name is coming in, I don't care. I don't care what it is. I'm going to set name heading out, okay? So that's why I'm marking it as an out parameter. And our hours worked, same thing. That's an out because hours worked coming in, I'm not going to check it. It's not going to change anything that I do. So as such, I call it an out parameter. Now our IF stream, our DN does affect us. It does affect us a lot because this is where we're getting our input from. So this is an in variable, an in parameter for me. So if I take this, put this up here, and let me just try to run this really quick just to make sure. So remember, this is what I was talking about with the, it doesn't seem to have any problem with me doing this. But either way, it's going to pass by reference. So in here, what we're going to do is we're just going to do our copy and paste this. Because we're going to use this DN that we pass in to read a line from the file. And this will set name, hours worked, and pay rate for us. So now our priming read, we can actually change it from reading all this in to just get line of data and pass in our DN statement and our name and our hours worked and our pay rate. And then if we replace our modify LCV with this as well. Now nothing should have changed. And we're good. So at least you can see if there was like a whole bunch of things that we're reading from this file, and maybe we're checking stuff to see if like this line of data is good or something like that. We can use this. It'll be helpful for us to um, make this a function that actually does the reading of the data, but that variable for the file, since you're reading it in main and you're looping through it in main, you need that dn declared and initialized up in main so that you have the open file and you just pass it into the function, and then the function reads from the file as it needs to, and that gets updated back in main. Now, I would like, just for consistency's sake, pass your DNs by reference just because it makes it more clear. But well, let's just double check, make sure I'm not lying to you, that this should be the exact same thing, even if we don't pass it by reference. I lied to you. So, yep, that's the issue. It insists on it being, you can see IF stream, and then there's the ampersand, attempting to reference a deleted function. So, now we put that back in. Yay, it works again. Sorry, I keep scrolling around. I'm trying to get a... There we go. Okay, does that make sense, why we would do this?
Couldn't you just loop through it once and set that all to an array in theory?
Yes, you could. Uh, Two problems with that. And the first one is we haven't went through arrays, so you don't know anything about them. Well, I know you do, but you don't know anything about them. And secondly, you don't really want to do that because you're reading this file from the disk, right? Who's to say that this file isn't a billion lines long and you exceed your memory? Because everything that you declare here as a variable is volatile memory. It's memory in RAM. So you're taking basically this whole file that's on hard drive, your non-volatile memory, and you're just plunking it right into your volatile memory. Maybe that would be fine if you had a guarantee that it could fit, but
Or even if you put like a break in or something like that?
yeah, you could, but you can see already that like that's getting more and more complicated, right?
Yeah, yep. Like,
And to be completely honest with you, and to be completely fair, um, there are lots of functions for stuff like this in other languages that I mean, you're here in academics. We want you to do things the hard way so that you understand it better. But for a lot of languages, there's like a read all lines that will do just that. It'll literally just take it and like read all the lines and store the content somewhere that you tell it to.
gotcha.
Remember, programmers, we're lazy. There's probably a shortcut for everything that I taught you this whole semester. Okay, let me. Okay, so let me get some space here. So if we had a loop here, sorry, my tablet's slipping around. It's supposed to be count plus plus right there. So if we had this while loop, well, this is declare and initialize our LCV, right? So here we have declare and initialize LCV. Here we have our loop test. Here we have our loop body. And here we have our modify LCV. So if we were to take this and transform it into a for loop, what would be our first step to doing that?
Initialize the LCV.
And how do I do that? Do I int count 0 like that?
No, in the parentheses.
In the parentheses. Okay, so that's the first step, initialize the LCV. What's the second step?
Test.
Test. So if I identified my loop test over here, which I think I did, I just put that right over here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Then semicolon, and then what's left?
Your modify LCV.
Modify
So count plus plus.
LCV. I'm gonna put my curly brace down here. Now, last thing. The last thing. It's a little bit out of order because it's a for loop, but what goes here?
Your body.
The loop body, which I identified as this. So I'll put that there. Okay. Now if I said I want a loop, a count controlled loop, let's just say, that outputs the first 10 even numbers starting at 2. So from 2 to 12 inclusive, let's just say. And I only want to output the even numbers. How could I accomplish that? Let's say this is a count controlled loop. So what's my best looping structure to use?
For loop.
A for loop. Okay. Let's say I want to call it int I for 1
Set it to 2.
to 2. Okay. And then semicolon. And then what's my loop test?
Well, I is less than or equal to 12.
I like it. That works. And then now, the moment of truth. What is my modify LCV?
I plus 2. Or I plus equals 2.
Oh, that works. That works. You know, honestly, didn't see that coming. But that does absolutely work. An alternative would be, if you don't remember that the shorthand, you can absolutely do I equals I plus 2 in here. No problem with that. Okay, so this starts at 2. We say is I less than or equal to 12. That's true. So we go in, we execute something, and then I plus equals 2, which is the equivalent of this. So then 2 goes to 4. Okay, so now we just gotta see out I, right?
Mhm.
And if I said just separate it one per line, put an end line there, and we're done. Okay, that works. Now, now this is a good question. This is a good one. Not that the other ones weren't good, but I want to end with a good question, so we might as well have a good one. What if I want the user to input an X or a Y, and I don't want them to enter. No, let's go back. Let's say that the user is going to input a number, but we want the user to guess a number between 1 and 10 inclusive. So 1 through 10 is what we want them to input, and we're going to be doing some error checking. So we're error checking the user's input. Tell me, what is the first loop structure that comes to mind for this?
Do while?
A do while. I definitely agree. I agree. It's not wrong to do it other ways, but this makes the most sense to me. So I'm going to declare my int input over here. I'm just going to call it int in. And then so I'll do my do right there. And then we will do our cout. Please enter a number between 1 and 10. And then we do cin in, right?
Mhm.
And now what we can do is, well, I'm gonna say bool valid. This is how I want to do it, but no, there's more than one way to do this, right? So we'll say valid equals, and we can do in. So because we put the user's input in. So is that greater than or equal to 1 and in less than or equal to 10? So this evaluates to a Boolean, right? And that gets stored in valid. So if not valid, then we can cout error. And tell them try it again, something like that. And then for our do, this is the ending curly brace for that. We can say while not valid. And then don't forget the semicolon and a do while. So if we come in, we say bool valid. Let's set that to false initially, just for argument's sake. So valid false. And then we have our int in, so in over here. Do, we cout to the user, we say, hey, please input a number between 1 and 10. And then we do a cin. And Alex, what do you type?
For what again?
Please input a number between 1 and 10. What are you going to type in there?
Between 1 and 10?
Well, that's what it's asking for. What do you want to input?
3.
3. I heard a 30. Okay, so
Alright then.
30. Welcome to CIS 143, where your answers don't matter. No. So we see in, okay, so the user enters a 30. Let's see what happens, because we'll see what if they input something invalid, we want to loop back around. So let's make sure that that works. So valid is 30 greater than or equal to 1. That's true. And so we don't short circuit. We go on and we say is 30 less than or equal to 10. Well, that's false. So a true and a false is a false. So false gets replaced with false still. So if not valid, valid is false. If we not it, that turns to true. So true, we go in, we see out error. And then for our while statement, we say not valid. Well, valid is false, so we not that. That turns to true. We go back to the top and we see out, please enter a number between 1 and 10. Now, Alex, this time, you fat fingered it last time. That's what it was. So
That's a wild fat finger, I tell you.
it should have been like 33 or something, right?
Yeah.
So this time, you actually do enter 3 like you intended. And so we say is in, which is 3, greater than or equal to 1. That's true. And is 3 less than or equal to 10. That's true. So valid is set to true. So we say if not valid, well, true turns to false when we not it. So we don't go into the if statement. So we don't output the error message. And then we say while not valid, well, true turns to false because of the not. So we exit out of the loop and we've successfully validated the user's input. All right, any questions on any of those random questions that I just came up with? Did I confuse anybody more? All right, good. Good. I didn't do that bad then. Oh, and really quick, just want to ask one more time if anybody has any questions about anything in the course, anything at all. Open floor. All right, so everybody's good. Everybody knows what they're working on. There's a lot of assignments out there right now. So I'm gonna yield the rest of the time to let you guys, work on your labs and do all that stuff. Stay on top of the homework. Do not forget about that quiz that's opening up tomorrow. Remember, it's open Saturday as well. Um, we will have one last quiz next week, and then the week after that, anybody want to take a guess at what that is?
Final?
As the final. I believe it's on the 5th. I gotta double check some stuff because this is wild and crazy. So, just want to make sure that we still have that same day. Um, but yeah, so we do not have much time left. So if anything is confusing you, now's the time to ask. All right. No questions? Then I